Polymerization! Go, soldier!
Go, Ultimate Dragon! Combine! Mythic Dragon! Obliterate them! What? Nothing happened!
Oh, something has happened! Behold! The Supreme Dragon Master Knight!
Honestly, chills. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about what I believe is going to be the #1 best and most consistent way of summoning the Dragon Master Magia. Now this card for me is probably the coolest card ever printed, genuinely. And it just hasn't seen any play, and it's not because the card itself is bad. The card itself, when you read it, it's like a custom card, right? It's the kind of thing somebody makes up, and then people say, "But that's just stupid. You can't possibly think that's a fair card that could ever be printed." The issue is, though, is that it's always been nigh on impossible to actually make, unless, of course, you want to commit to making your deck a bricky mess, which in competitive play, or even at locals, to be honest, for a lot of people, nobody actually wants that. Nobody wants to go through the effort of sleeving up the deck and everything else, going down to locals, and then going X4, even if they are playing, and I quote, a meme deck, right? Or, oh, well, I was playing a Magia in my deck, so I don't mind that I lost every single game. Said nobody ever, by the way. So consider this as a bit of a sneak preview for a larger Dark Magician, a Yummy guide that will be coming out post Magnificent Monsters. But I really wanted to wait for the ban list before making a 40-50 minute guide on Yummy Dark Magician, which I do think, by the way, is going to be a genuine contender in the next format. More on that after the ban list. In the meantime, I wanted to show how we can use Yummy Dark Magician to make Magia in a way that is not only a one-card combo, but also does not involve making your deck a bricky mess that feels miserable to play. I'm not suggesting, just so we're clear, that this is the best way of playing Yummy Dark Magician, but it's got to be one of the coolest, let's face it. Anyway, let me show you the combo. So, I just want to show how we can do this with one card. It does require discards, so call it a 1.5 card combo. So we've got the Ojammers here to show that the other cards in our hand really do not matter. So what you do is you start by special summoning the Marshmallow. Marshmallow will link off for Snatchy, using its trigger effect to get the minion, activate to bring back the Marshmallow, and then we're going to turn those into a Cupsy. Trigger effect of the Cupsy, and you're going to get Cupsy. Now from here, if you've gone first and you don't know what deck your opponent is playing, I think the Cookie is normally the better option because it's a monster pop, which is typically going to add value, isn't it? Let's face it, against pretty much any deck. But of course, if you know what deck your opponent is on, the Lollipo with a graveyard manipulation might have more value. But for all intents and purposes, we've won the dice roll. We don't know what deck our opponent is playing, and so we're going to get the Cookie. Now, in normal Yummy combos, what you do here is you would discard the name that isn't Cupsy, but instead what we're going to do is Picture Blank. The reason we're going to do this is because if we sequence it like this, then we get to keep the Yummy Surprise and get an SP Little Knight on our end board. You'll see what I mean later. If you wanted to forego either the SP Little Knight or the Yummy Surprise, which I don't recommend, to be honest, you could instead just discard the Cookie in this scenario. But for me, this makes more sense. Anyway, what we do now is we would special summon the Cupsy, grabbing the Surprise, and we special summon the Cookie, because we need the extra bodies, you see. That's why we got rid of an Ojammer, so that we could keep both of the Yummy names that could special summon themselves to the field. Now what we're going to do is we will make a Linkaribo, because now we can go into a Lollipo using those two bodies. Trigger effect of the Lollipo, bringing back two Yummy names, really doesn't matter. And now we're going to go into the Cyberse Contract Witch, using its trigger effect, and this is why it's such a nice interaction in this deck in particular, because it can send a spell from your hand or the field. Now the minion has already it's been used, right? We get no further value from this, so we can send this to the graveyard, free real estate. Search for Illusion of Chaos. Not only that, minion can shuffle things back from our graveyard into our deck if required. So not only is it free real estate, minion's actually better off in the graveyard at this point than it was on the field. So what you do from here, we would reveal the Illusion of Chaos, getting ourselves a Magician's Rod, but we're going to keep the Illusion of Chaos. Instead, we're going to shuffle back another one of our blanks. So we'll get rid of another Jammer card. We'll normal summon the Magician's Rod, activating this trigger effect to get ourselves a Dark Magical Curtain. We will activate the Dark Magical Curtain, special summoning the Dark Magician. Now this could be Dark Magician Girl instead of Dark Magician. I won't go into this in too much detail right now, I'll save it for the longer guide. The reason Dark Magician Girl would have relevance is because obviously it's a 6, which opens you up to make Synchro 8 plays using the DMG, whereas with the Dark Magician itself, it has value if you're using Timaeus on the vanilla Dark Magician, because then obviously your Dragoon has the burn. So there's arguments both for and against Dark Magician or DMG, and you would only play one, right? You pick one and you play that one. So we're going to add a spell or a trap. We add the Gaze of Timaeus. So this is one of the only kind of garnets. I think if you play in a Dark Magician deck, it's not fair to call this a garnet, realistically. I don't think you can call this a brick in an actual Dark Magician deck. Now what we're going to do is we're going to special summon our D-Mod using its trigger effect, and we will search for what is in my mind the only actual garnet, and that would be the Secrets of Dark Magic. I think realistically this is a bad draw, so we're only going to play one. You don't really want to draw it. Again, in a Dark Magician deck, you could argue it's not actually a brick. It's definitely at least a garnet though, and not something you want to be drawing. So what we do from here, I mentioned that we needed the additional body, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to activate our Yumi Surprise. We will special summon the Marshmallow. As it hits the field, trigger effect, bringing back the surprise, right? So again, free value. And what you do from here is we're going to go into Metal Marcher, Synchro 3, using its trigger effect to bring back the Lollipo. Now, from here, IP Masquerena isn't going to work because obviously IP Masquerena needs 2 non-link monsters. So you do need to go straight into the Little Knight instead. You might be thinking, oh, well, we'll make a fancy ball, but that won't work either because that's a link 3 and we're under the restriction of the Snatchy. So what we're going to do is turn Lollipo and Cyber's Contract Witch into an SP Little Knight. So if we haven't yet been hit with Nib, we do now have a layer of insulation. Nib's a weird one though, no one's really on it at the minute, which means people probably should be on it, because the second it becomes considered a bad card, it starts being a good card. I've said this before, but yeah, I think Nib is unironically probably not a bad option at the minute. That's a separate video. Anyway, we won't be activating the trigger effect of the Little Knight. Now at this point, what we do is we activate the Secrets of Dark Magic, special summoning our Illusion of Chaos, ritual summoning our Illusion of Chaos by using Dark Magician of Destruction. And now what we're going to do is Synchro 6 for a Muddy Muddragon using the Metal Marcher and the Magician's Rod. And now we can activate the effect of the Muddy Muddragon because it can be used as substitutes for any one fusion material whose name is specifically listed on the fusion monster card. So this is now basically Ultimate Blue Eyes, right? And now we can make our Magia using the Mud Dragon, aka Ultimate Blue Eyes White Dragon, and of course our Illusion of Chaos to make ourselves a Magia. Now in this scenario, if this was your end board, you wouldn't realistically activate Gaze of Timaeus. Now, of course, I'm going to just so you can see the full end board, right? But realistically, to give yourself a layer of protection against Kaijus, you'd hold the Dragoon in reserve. But starting with a Marshmallow, your end board is basically a Dragoon, a Magia, an SP Little Knight, and full Yummy combo. All of the Yummy interactions that come from having Cupsy plus the Yummy Surprise. And I just think, realistically, this is the best way of playing Magia, right? I'm not saying Magia is the best way of playing this deck. That's a separate conversation. But as far as I've seen, and I've been looking for a way to summon Magia for a long, long time, by the way, I just feel like this is by far the most consistent way, the most effective way of getting this card onto the field without having to play a really bad deck in the process, because I think this deck is actually unironically quite good. I'm not saying it's going to be, stronger than Toon. I'm not saying it's going to be stronger than the new Elf Note brew. I don't know if you've been watching some of the OCG lists, by the way, but Toon is no longer the best deck in the format. It's actually Elf Note because of the new support. But yeah, that doesn't mean we can't enjoy playing this deck still, right? It doesn't mean this deck isn't good just because a completely broken deck that's destined for the ban list is better than it. Anyway, let me show you what a skeleton deck profile might look like for this if you wanted to play this yourself. So as a quick, call it skeleton deck list, right? If you want to play this version of Yummy Dark Magician, one thing you'll notice is that we're running 18 one-card starters. Now, these might change. You might decide you want to play additional copies of Illusion of Chaos. You might decide you want to play additional Yummy names, additional preparation of rites, because obviously that makes your DMod live. That's all up for debate. You can change those around, but you can very comfortably be running 18 one-card starters, more if you wanted to, honestly. The only real garnets of the deck, you've got the Minion. If you wanted to play the Croquet, that is, again, it is a garnet. It's not really something you want to draw. It does actually offer a lot more interruptions. It's a good card for the deck, but we're trying to streamline, not run too many bricks, not run too many garnets. The Keys of Timaeus and the Secrets of Dark Magic, again, they're kind of garnets or bricks. Call it a garnet and a half. Not quite a brick, but definitely not something you want to open. Magician's Souls, I don't think you can actually call a brick or a garnet, to be honest, because in the Yummy deck, of course, it is actually a really good extender. And Dark Magician, there's no getting away from it. Whether you run Dark Magician or whether you run DMG, it's a brick. It's just a big, giant, massive brick. So what we could do, if we wanted to, is do something like this, where we decide to run all the best hand traps on an engine, because we've got room for absolutely loads, in case you hadn't noticed. So we'll just fill it full of random, I say random, we're not putting it full of actual random cards, but what you could do is play a 42 card list, just to try and drown the garnets a little bit. You've got room for absolutely tons of non-engine, and for me the best non-engine in the game right now, the only real good hand traps in my mind is basically this. So 3 Fuwa, 3 Perilia, 3 Troll and Lockbird, because they're the only cards which can really stop your opponent in the tracks. With the Toon meta that's around the corner, I think you do actually need space for hand traps, so your side deck would basically be loads of cards that can stop Toons. But what we've got here is an 18 card list with an absolute ton of non-engine. Sorry, 18 card list, 18 one-card starters, tons of non-engine. We take it to the extra deck. You got Cupsy, Cookie, Lollipop, the Metal Marcher, and the Muddy Mud Dragon. These are required for the combo to make it a one-card Magia. Links, we've got Snatchy, we've got Cyber's Contract Witch, which is just a fantastic card for this deck. You could also go for Yummy Mitsurugi all over again if you wanted to. Separate video. IP Masquerena is actually cuttable because, yeah, I just think it's cuttable. It's in there as a kind of generically good end board piece. SP Little Knight. Now Artemis, again, technically cuttable, but a very strong extender, because there will be times where you will open Magician's Rod and one of your Yummy names. Now, if you normal the Magician's Rod and that gets interrupted, turn that into an Artemis, which then allows you to special summon the additional Yummy name. So I do think having the Artemis in there is actually quite good. Linkaribo, needed for the combo. Gravity Controller, again, it's needed for combos where you start with Magician's Rod and want to bridge into Yummy that way. And then, of course, we've got our DMod, our Dragoon, and our Magia. So it's quite a tight extra deck, but again, if you're playing this, you're playing it for Magia, really, aren't you? Let's face it, you're playing this so you can go to locals, summon Magia, and actually win some games in the process. Anyway, I wanted to try and keep this quite short because this is basically supposed to be a sneak preview ahead of the larger Yummy Dark Magician video that will be coming out. I just need to wait for the ban list because there are people out there who seem to think that this little chap, right, this little chap who's never done anything wrong in his life, by the way, might be getting banned. And if he does, it actually changes a lot. In my mind, they should just ban the broken links instead. But that's, yeah, that's a whole other conversation. Anyway, that's enough yapping for now. Wanted to try and keep this video a bit shorter. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see more like this. Hope to see you in the next one.